Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning into Sin's Workshop. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Alright, so today we're talking about a book I was very excited for. My Contrary Mary by Cynthia Han, Jody Meadows, and Brody Ashton. So these are the same authors that brought us the Janie's series, right? My Lady Jane, My Plain Jane, My Calamity Jane, which I still have to read. But let me just begin by saying loved it. It was such a good book. It really impressed me, much like their original, they're just going to say trilogy except for 2 out of the 3, much like their original trilogy did. And I think what's great is they're taking historical figures and they're giving their lives and story a new spin. With My Contrary Mary, we're following Mary, Queen of Scots. And it takes place during the same world, same universe that they've set up for My Lady Jane. So there's this illusion between, if you're familiar with history, you know that during Queen Elizabeth's reign, and even before that, there was such a there was such a disagreement between Protestants and Catholicism. You know, it was just bloody. Lots of people died. So these authors have decided to redo it. Now we have Ethians and non-Ethians. So Ethians are individuals who have the ability to shapeshift into one particular animal. They can't just turn into whatever animal they want. They get their chosen animal form. For Mary, if you know a little bit about history, she was often said to be quiet like a mouse. And so her Ethian form is a mouse. And she uses her mouse ability to kind of eavesdrop on everything that's going on in her home in France, you know, at the palace with Francis and Henry and Catherine de Medici. So these authors are pulling all of these historical figures, but they're giving them their own interpretation, while also kind of staying true to what we know of them from history. I mean, we know that Mary has always been a queen. She's always been kind of regal. We know that Catherine de Medici wasn't the greatest person in the world. We know that Francis and Mary were best friends. You know, we know a little bit of these people from history. And Nostradamus is there as well as his daughter, whose first name I can't remember, mainly because they called her something de Nostradam. So I just remember the de Nostradam part. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit about her in a second because she was great. I think it's fantastic how these authors are reinterpreting history. And you know what makes it even funnier? They break the fourth wall. They do. In the story, the authors are inserting their own voices. They're like, well, dear reader, if you know a little bit about history, this is me just paraphrasing an example. This happened, you know, blah, blah, blah happened, but we're not going to do that here. So stick with us, dear reader. And it happens so much throughout the story, but it flows. It doesn't break up the pacing. It doesn't break up the momentum. And it definitely doesn't take you, the reader, out of the story. In fact, for me, it drew me more in because I was just like, all right, ladies, let's see what you got. What you're going to do with history now. If you know a little about history, Mary, she kind of lost her head. And Francis died very young from an ear infection. So, yeah. They didn't really get happy endings in real life, so it's literature. Why not give them a happy ending here or there? And so they do. They get their happy endings. And I loved it. I loved every single moment of the journey here because it was funny. It was funny, it was humorous, and the story is broken up into the three perspectives. So you've got Mary's perspective, you have Francis's perspective, and then you have the de Nostradamus perspective. They're all very different, they're all very distinct, and they all have very different voices and personalities that draw you, the reader, into the story. And I think that that's great. It worked out so well for the story's development. It kept the humor in the story. It kept just the lightness of it in there. You know, it just really it was so good. There were points where I would be reading and I would just burst out laughing because of something that was so funny. And people would just look at me and be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, funny moment in the book, funny moment. And it's a book that stays with you because it's so lighthearted, you know? I mean, his history isn't like really lighthearted, let's face it. There's lots of doom and gloom, lots of blood, lots of sadness, tragedies in history. So I like that the authors are just like, all right, well, we can't just leave all the tragedy out, but why do we have to make it so dour, you know? They focus on bringing to life these historical figures. They focus on giving them a life, one that they didn't have. And I found that to be just, for me, a little heartwarming because Mary Queen of Scots is probably one of the more historical figures that I actually do love. You know, I am fascinated with her history. And yes, I watched the show Reign. And here's something funny. So remember how I was going to say we're going to talk about the Nostradamus girl in a second? All right, so she's a seer. She sees the future. And lol, the references to pop cultures that these authors make is hilarious. They reference Reign. They reference Terminator. Those are just two of the things that they reference because she's a seer. She just sees glimpses of history or glimpses of the future. And you, the reader, you're just like, oh, I know what that is. And it makes you laugh. Again, it just draws you in with the humor. It doesn't break you away from it because there is that risk, you know. Too many references to pop culture could just create a bridge between the reader and the story. But the way the authors did it, they wove it into the storytelling to make it very creative and very imaginative. You don't get taken out of the story. You're drawn in furthermore because of the humor, because of the references, because of the way the authors break the fourth wall and talk to you. And I think it's great how they worked together to bring out their own individual voices while also making sure that the story as a whole is cohesive. I imagine when they're writing, they're probably sitting together or Skyping together or Zoom, you know, they're communicating. I'm sure they each were just like, I'm gonna write this character, I'm gonna write this character, I'm gonna write this character. But you can definitely see the author's love and respect for one another and for the story as a whole because it's such a cohesive and well done story. Now, I'm just imagining that they did one character. You know, each one's like, oh, I'll take this one, I'll take this one, I'll take this one. And they sat around and did the story together. But that's just me. Is that how their writing process was? No, but it doesn't matter how their writing process was because whatever they did worked. You can definitely see unity between the authors through their storytelling and through their writing. You see the respect they have for one another and the respect they have for history as a whole. They are giving these stories, these historical figures, their own interpretation. And again, I can't stress how creative and imaginative that is. It's just, it was a good book. It was excellent. It was, I just, love. Just all the love. Love. This is definitely one of my favorite books of 2021. It's definitely going to be on my best books list at the end of the year because it's just such a wow moment kind of book. You know what I mean? It's just wow. It was good. And I loved that it took place in the same universe as My Lady Jane. And I love how My Lady Jane is there at the end of the book. You know? She's there. And you weren't expecting that, and you're just like, I love this even more. The fact that it called back to the novel that started it all made it work so well. So, I guess you can guess. You can probably guess what I'm going to give this book. 5 stars. It's just amazing. My Contrary Mary definitely gets 5 stars because it was just spectacular on every single level. Spectacular. If you want to go ahead and purchase the book, I do recommend purchasing it from your local bookseller or online book retailer. There are so many resources out there: Bookshop, IndieBound, Book Depository, Better World Books, Book Outlet, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Support your bookstores. And if you have an indie bookstore out there near you, support them as well. Bookstores deserve way more support than Amazon does. So all I ask is that, because I literally buy everything off of Amazon except my books. So I'm pretty sure Amazon has enough support from everything else. They don't need the bookstores deserve our book support more. If money's tight, please check out the book from your local library. Libraries are there for you and deserve your support as well. And on that note, I hope you all will continue to support me by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and sharing it with all your book-loving friends. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, and as always, happy reading.